Welcome back to the channel, baby.
Thanks.
Number 4.
Yep, rolling along.
What are we covering today?
We are covering settling into our new house, new job, community, some holidays, kind of that first, half year, getting settled in our new place in Kansas.
I'm ready when you are.
Okay. So we left off with moving into our new house in Kansas. It was new to us, but it was actually an old converted schoolhouse. The year we moved in 2008 was its 100th birthday. And it's converted into a home. There's an addition and they put a drop ceiling in. So we had a couple of rooms upstairs. It has 4 bedrooms, but really the 2 upstairs are like half bedrooms with these sloping ceilings here. So it's a challenge to, fit all the furniture and how to use all the space. And like I said last time, the movers came right before Thanksgiving, actually the week of Thanksgiving, to move us in, and we started setting up house. We spent months after that figuring out how to stay warm in our house. We have these huge banks of windows, and they're all single-paned windows. The ducting in the house was only kind of heated the house. We had a wood-burning stove, but we just moved there. We didn't have any wood really to burn, and so we were freezing. We also had all the holes to fill around the house and find the holes that the mice had been getting into, find the nests. There was like one in the kitchen, and get that all sealed up and taken care of, and catch all the mice that were still scurrying around. We could hear them in the walls, and we'd find droppings in the silverware drawer and stuff like that. And so there was a lot of work and cleanup to do right away. At this point, I was still working remotely. I don't think I was quite 40 hours a week. I dropped my hours back, but that got to be a little bit more challenging here. The only internet we could get was satellite internet, and doing some of my projects, I needed to remote into computers in Florida, and so I couldn't work on those projects anymore because it was just so slow that I wasn't worth paying to try to just sit there waiting for the internet to work. So that was a new thing that I was trying to navigate, but was still doing that. Meredith was a year and a half, so she was getting a little more able to entertain herself, and we had a new big yard and things to help with, hauling branches and building sheds and stuff like that. We also had found a church, and I was super excited that they had a really active moms group that I could join, and they had Bible studies and play dates, and it was just wonderful to be able to start meeting people and making friends, and then just sharing life experiences, struggles and joys and all that kind of stuff. So Brian's new job was working as a contractor at Fort Riley, and this was a good transition for him from military life to civilian life. He was working to train troops that were getting ready to deploy how to identify IEDs, so prevent casualties and loss of life. And this was a framework, a place that he was comfortable with, and teaching a subject that he was passionate about. So it was a nice transition for him as far as a job in the civilian world. A good start for him, and lots of new stuff. So at this point, we're just dealing with all the new things. We had our A game on. We were not noticing a lot of symptoms, if you will. They diminished during this time because we were busy trying to fit in and figure out our house and all the new things we had going on. So like I said, we moved in the week of Thanksgiving, so that first we were trucking right into holidays with this move. This was actually our first Thanksgiving together in our house. At this point, we'd been married 3 years. The first Thanksgiving, Brian was deployed. The second one, he was in Maryland training, and I went and visited him out there. So we did Thanksgiving at a restaurant. The next one, he was deployed. So here we are and we're full of boxes. The kitchen's not set up, so we went to a restaurant. But this was our first Thanksgiving together, and then, right into Christmas, and we had to get a little creative there because we were still unpacking, and I found a picture of socks hanging by the fire because we couldn't find our stockings apparently. So, but we were still really kind of in the newlywed stage of holidays. We hadn't spent many together, so we hadn't had a chance to take our traditions from each of our families and figure out, what we loved and wanted to keep, what we wanted to start new, all that stuff. So it was just boxes and lots of unwrapping paper, and it was a good holiday. It was transition holiday, if you will. So we got through the holidays and all of these transitions and started to finally settle into our house. The projects were kind of ongoing, but the critical things were, taken care of. And so we were just settling into life, into daily routines at this point. And it was a new start for us, living our lives together, figuring things out. After, all the transition part, coming into living our life, the problems were still there. We were still having conflict. We'd have arguments, and it would often devolve into the same couple of topics that we were struggling with. And at some point, I think I said, okay, we need help, because we weren't making any progress. We weren't figuring it out, and we just kept ending up at the same spot and not getting anywhere. And Brian agreed. So we started looking for someone to help us, a therapist, to try to sort this out and get on a good track here. So we found a therapist, and with Meredith in tow, we'd go to these sessions. And I went to these appointments kind of looking for a neutral party to take each of our side, points of views, perspectives, and help us recognize where we were having hangups and give us tools to help communicate better and meet each other's needs. I was pretty sure I was the problem, based on the way our arguments would go. So I hoped to hear from someone else that, yes, that's not a good way to communicate. Here's a better way. And it wasn't because I didn't believe Brian when he said I wasn't communicating well, but it was more that I didn't understand what he was needing. It didn't make sense to me, and I needed help. Kind of, say it in a different way so that I could understand, and then we could move forward. So we went to these sessions, and I really don't remember much from the sessions. I don't remember how many times we went. It's kind of vague for me, but I was ready to go and learn and change my way of thinking and communicating. It didn't really happen. I felt like the sessions focused on Brian, not so much anything I needed to change or do. I didn't walk away with any tools. Brian remembers the sessions a little better than I do. I think he told me recently PTSD was brought up and dismissed in these sessions. Nope, you don't have PTSD. That's not the problem. So again, we were told, you're not dealing with PTSD. So we just go, okay. So again, I didn't look into what PTSD was or see if that's, any of that stuff was matching with things we were dealing with. The one thing that does clearly stand out in my memory from those sessions was at our last session, I think Brian was helping Meredith get her jacket on or shoes or something like that. And the therapist kind of pulled me aside and was like, if you ever need anything, just let me know. And it was just kind of the way he said it was like he knew something was wrong or amiss, but he never said it in the therapy session with the both of us. And it was confusing, made me feel doubtful about what was going on with our relationship. I didn't tell Brian that because I thought that was very odd. I told him years later, but it was, again, we had these therapy sessions. We didn't really get the help we needed at that time. And, and again, PTSD was dismissed. So we didn't really solve any problems there. We went home and still were struggling.
I will try to keep this brief. He was a Vietnam veteran, this psychiatrist, and the sessions seemed to me to be a competition between he and I. I think he realized early on that I had done some significant things in the military. Um, and I asked him openly about PTSD because I didn't know anything. And he asked me a couple of questions. One was, and I'm paraphrasing here, basically it was, did you do anything that violated your morals? Like, you know, did I kill anybody I shouldn't have killed or something like that? And I said, no. And he said, okay, did you see anybody do anything that violated your morals or the rules of engagement or anything like that? And I said, no, I didn't see any of that. Well, you don't have PTSD. And then he immediately goes on to tell me that how in Vietnam, like, that was some stuff. Like the bouncing Betty was a new thing. And like he didn't understand why all these guys coming back from Iraq with these IEDs were so messed up because Vietnam was a terrible war. Quick edit. Vietnam was a horrible war. The bulk of that 22 a day veterans committing suicide statistic is made up of Vietnam era veterans. I just don't think that veterans should be competing with each other in therapy.
Not real helpful.
Not real helpful. At the kind of the end of the last session, he kind of tried to point everything back toward my dad, and I was being like my dad, and my dad was the cause of it, and emulating my dad was the source of all of our problems, without any real explanation. I don't know that I would call it ironic, but kind of the funny ending to this story is today, right before we're making this video, I looked this guy up again, and he has about 13 local reviews from people who have seen him, and not a one of them is above 2 stars out of 5. And several people say, run as fast as you can away from this guy. He's only looking for the money. So I did find his obituary. He's now resting in peace, so I don't feel like we have to warn anybody in the local area about his quality of therapy. But not what we needed, not helpful.
Yep.
And that does happen. There's bad therapy out there.
This was only our second therapist that we encountered, so we had no background, and I don't think sites like what you found today existed then, you know, rate your doc or whatever, and the Google ratings and all that stuff. I don't think that was there. So having a good therapist makes a huge difference.
Knowing what you're dealing with makes a huge difference too, as we found out many years later.
Yeah.
I think we talked about earlier, this is a good place to stop, even though the story's a little shorter this time, because what comes next is a significant, like you say, core memory or life-changing event that unfortunately kind of locked us into the wrong direction. So, thank you, baby.
You're welcome. Losing my place.